Hello and welcome to the Pueblo Passion podcast. I am Ben Cason here with a titan here in Pueblo, Stephen Trujillo. Stephen, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Ben?
Great. Dude, I'm honored to have you on the podcast, Stephen.
Well, it's an honor to be here. I know we had been talking about it for a while, and certainly glad we were able to make it work.
Me too. And you're definitely somebody who deserves to be a part of this list. We've been going through people who are passionate about Pueblo. Why Pueblo? Why are people so passionate about it? That's what we're trying to study here with the different people who do different things here in the community. And so, Stephen, you're a guy, you've been in Pueblo your whole life, right?
Yes.
So why Pueblo? What's so special about this place?
Well, that's a loaded question right
Yeah.
out of the gate. Happy to answer it as best as I could. You know, sometimes I think about it in terms of why not Pueblo. When you look around the country and, you know, being born and raised here, I see other things in other communities and ask sometimes that question, why not in Pueblo? Why can't we have that amenity in our community?
Yeah.
Why can't we have that program or that opportunity, whatever the case may be? So being born and raised here, you know, my family was on both sides. My mother and my father, both sides of the family were here in Pueblo. And so, you know, growing up as a kid, went to school, you know, we would get involved in things at the state fair. We would get involved with things, church festivals, you name it.
Sure.
And I just grew this passion and this love for my community. This was home. This is where all of my family was. And so as I grew older and started, you know, looking at different things, obviously the question always becomes, well, where do you want to go to college, right?
Sure.
And that was really the point there where I thought, oh gosh, what does that look like? Is that meaning to leave Pueblo? Is that going to be here? What have you?
Yeah.
So as the time drew near and I started getting involved with other things in the community, you know, from my church to volunteer groups and other things, again, I really looked at it from the perspective of, well, if I have to leave for college, I will, but I don't want to go too far, you know, from my community. So there was always just this
pull.
This pull here, if you will. And then one day I remember I was, you know, going through with my advisor in high school some different things, and she said, well, have you ever been on the campus of Colorado State University, Pueblo? And to be honest with you, I'd been on the campus a couple times for certain things, but for some reason it never clicked, like, well, that should be where I go, duh, right?
Sure.
And so what I did is I said, well, no, I haven't. I mean, I've been there for some events and some activities that the college put on, but I've never really explored it from the perspective of this could be where I
might be there,
yeah. Yeah. So she lined up a tour, and I remember meeting with one of the advisors. At that point, I was in an early college program, so I had just completed my associate's degree, and really had made the decision I want to major in business. That was something that I had kind of said, I really love the world of business and you know, marketing, all those things. That's what I want to do. So she had lined up a tour for me to go onto the campus and tour the Hassan School of Business. And I met with one of the most amazing individuals there. I still remember him. We're still connected to this day. Steve Jantz was his name, and he was an advisor there. Just high energy. I mean, knew everybody. And the minute I was on that campus and started the tour, it just felt like home. And within 10 minutes, I made my mind up, this is where I want to be. This is where I want to go to school. I've got the best of both worlds. I've got a top-notch education with a top-notch business school, and I get to stay in my hometown community, close to my family, which was always important to me.
Yeah.
That is one of my core pillars. You know, when I look at all of the things in my life, that is the group that I go back to, my family.
Yeah.
So that was really how I ultimately arrived to the decision, I'm going to stay here in Pueblo.
Yeah.
And then, you know, continued my community involvement from there, you know, got a part-time job, was going to school, doing all those things, and the rest is history, as they say. So,
the rest is history.
Up until this point. So
That's interesting. I had honestly a very similar experience to that for me picking a college, because I was looking around and I had gone and thought about Arizona State and North Texas and a few other places just like out of here.
Right.
And so I grew up in Rye, which I don't know if you consider that Pueblo, but we were Pueblo County, so I kind of was feeling that same draw.
Right.
And so I had been to CSU Pueblo just for like a few math counts events and things like that. And then I walked in and do you know Letitia Steffen in the mass comm department?
Yeah.
She met with me and she just sold me. I was like, oh, wow.
So see, I think that goes back to a part of the question too, why Pueblo?
Yeah.
You know, for me, that was a piece of, you know, why Pueblo, my family, all of those different things, the opportunity. But I think that's one of the other big pieces, why Pueblo is the people, the culture. You know, there just seems to be a different level, if you will. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. I think I would wonder if my other colleagues and others that have been on this before would kind of say the same. It's sometimes, it's like beauty. It's hard to define, but you know it when you see it. And that's what I kind of consider like with Pueblo. You know, why Pueblo? Well, it's hard to define, but you just know it when you see it. You feel it. it's just a community where you want to be, for a variety of reasons, for whatever you may be looking for too. Obviously, over the years in the work that I've done with the Chamber, it's come back to, whatever you'd like, you can find here in Pueblo.
Yeah.
Are you into water sports or boating or whatever? Well, Lake Pueblo.
Yeah.
Are you into hiking and different trails? Well, look at the biking trails we have here, the hiking that's within not even 45 minutes.
Sure.
So there's all these different amenities that I think we have as a community that, they're here every day. We sometimes forget about them until we really have the opportunity to talk about them.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's interesting. I think a lot of people have a stigma against Pueblo. I think some people in Pueblo, but a lot of people from outside of Pueblo. So for me, I grew up in Rye, and so Rye's kind of a part of Pueblo, but at the same time, like I was still getting that, like, you don't want to be in Pueblo, right? I mean, it's just Pueblo. Yeah. Like you want to go to Denver for college, right? You want to do this. Yeah. So like, talk to me about why people who do that stigma may be wrong about that.
I think sometimes we are our own worst enemy as a community. We sometimes are harder on ourselves than others. I have had the great fortune of meeting some individuals in my professional career that have come in from different areas of the country, and they look and say, my God, this is the most amazing community that I've ever been to. And I think to myself, well, why is it that we're sometimes our worst critic then? What's the disconnect here?
Yeah.
And I think a part of it is just, sometimes, if you don't have that global perspective, or you really don't look outside of that box and really look at it, kind of comparing, if you will, to sometimes say, no, we're very lucky as a community to have what we have. We are very lucky as a community to have built what we've built. Yeah. But sometimes we only just look at it compared to ourselves and forget. And you look at other communities, and not to say anything bad about them, but you look at other communities and it's like, wow, we've come a long way. Our community has got a lot to be proud of. So we really need to shift that discussion, shift that mentality. Now, it obviously takes some work, right? It goes back to marketing and making people aware. Sometimes we have some best, kept secrets and gems in our community. It's like, wow, I never knew this was here. And it wasn't until I got involved with the Chamber, too, that I came to know of some of these other businesses out there. I'm like, this has been here in my community all along. And so for me, it was like, wow, I'm born and raised in Pueblo, but I didn't find them until I was in my mid-20s or so. And it's like, how did that happen? So that really becomes a part of it too, where I think we have to get out there as a community, explore our community. Don't just take for granted that, I was born and raised here and I know everything about Pueblo. Sure. No, I am still, to this day, learning more about my community, the ways that we got to where we are, the people, the businesses, you name it. Yeah. And I think that just adds to the history, it adds to the culture. But I would encourage everybody to do that. Look at your community as though you were a tourist visiting. Go down a different road, you know what I mean? Don't just go up one street, down that street to go to work and come home. Take a different route. Explore your community again. See what's being developed. See what's being worked on. Identify and look at ways that you can get involved and that you can support it, because I can guarantee that there is a place for everybody in the community to get involved in some degree, whether it's early childhood, whether it's higher education, whether it's volunteerism, whether it's church. Our community is rich with that type of opportunity. But it also takes people shifting their perspective and viewing it from a fresh lens to be able to say, oh wow, I never knew that was here. I can get involved with that and do it.
Wow. Yeah. Well, so Stephen, you mentioned the curiosity about all the different things going on here in town. How does that filter into what you do every day? So you're the president and CEO of the Pueblo Latino Chamber of Commerce. So can you talk to me for a second about what is the Pueblo Latino Chamber of Commerce and what do you guys do? And then why are you so passionate for that work? Because I know you've been doing that and you love that.
Yeah, 10 and a half years.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So when I first started with the Chamber in November of 2010, I had no idea what a chamber was necessarily, right? Yeah. And so that was one of the things I recall being asked, well, what is a chamber of commerce? And I was like, I'm not too sure. and I remember my friend saying, well, you're going to start working for them. Don't you think you should learn? I was like, yeah, I'll learn. I'll come back. And so, it's funny though, because I think that perspective or that hunger to say, I'm not sure what it is, but I'm going to dig in and really jump in there with both feet and see what we've got. Yeah. That is what allowed me to really immerse myself in what the work of the chamber is. Obviously here in Pueblo, and then certainly chambers across the country. But it also, again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, allowed me to get to know my community at a much deeper level, to understand, what made a business want to start their business here and those types of things. Sure. And from there, it really helped inform, how I could, apply my skills and apply what I've gained from my education experiences thus far to continue that same culture, if you will, of making this a place where businesses want to be.
Yeah.
And so in general, what a chamber essentially is, a support organization. We exist for the purpose of helping businesses through a variety of different programs, resources, partnerships, to help them really start, grow, and expand.
Yeah.
And so there's a variety of different things that we do specifically as a chamber. But what I equate it to, over the last 10 years is how I've come to define, when people ask that question, well, what is a chamber of commerce? And more specifically, well, what does the Latino Chamber of Commerce do for the community? How I've defined it is you've got your business networking, the importance, and we all know in Pueblo, the power of a handshake, the ability, word of mouth is a powerful tool, right? And so that is the way by which we try to establish an environment that will support that, bringing our businesses together, allowing them to expand on, their relationships, or allowing them to meet others is the first thing.
Yeah.
And then we have obviously our business development resources, so marketing. How do we as a chamber help tell that message of other businesses? What, from our directory to our website to public events to posting now on our social media accounts, raising that awareness of who's here in Pueblo, right?
Yeah.
To really encourage the message of shop local, keep those dollars local. It circulates more in our economy when you walk into a small business and make that, make that purchase versus going online to someone like an Amazon.
Sure.
So it really is, let's heighten the awareness of who's here and what we could do. The third is partnerships. Working with agencies like the United States Small Business Administration, the Colorado Small Business Development Center, SCORE, PTEC, all of these agencies that have a vested interest in the success of businesses is who we want to be able to work closely with to say, hey, when a client or when a member walks through that door and has a question or is in need of a resource that we don't readily have, it's important for us to have a partner that can come in and support that. Obviously, education is a big one. Now more than ever, things are moving at a breakneck speed. And so having the ability to keep businesses educated on those changes and developments and working again with partners to do that, offering webinars, offering classes, and obviously in the pandemic, we've really expanded a lot of that.
Sure.
Was what I believe is priority for a chamber to do. And then you have things like advocacy, community involvement, mentorship, all of those additional components that are important to cultivate the next generation of entrepreneurs, to engage them with the community, and to also lend that voice when appropriate, at whatever level it may be, whether it's federal, state, or local, to say, hey, this is something you need to consider. If we're going to make changes for the good of our business community, be mindful of this or that or what have you, and really listen to our members.
Yeah.
So that is how I equate what the chamber does, what we do specifically. And obviously it's a passion of mine because, I've seen it. I've seen what it is our chamber and our team can do collectively when we come together, not only as a chamber, but as a community with a focus to say, let's support these businesses and really help them do what it is they set out to do. Yeah. And with that growth, it's, when a business is successful, we're all successful. They hire people, they bring dollars in, they make expenditures in the community. So all of those things create a cycle that just supports Pueblo.
Yeah. And
so that's what what we're really proud to do at the Latino Chamber. I was extremely proud that our team was recognized. Despite all of the challenges of the pandemic, we were recognized in 2020 as the United States Hispanic Chamber's Chamber of the Year.
Wow.
And so, we were really honored to receive that recognition and bring it here to Pueblo. And, my colleagues across the country, were just, they always have expressed, they say, Pueblo is on the map. And I say, yes, it is. And so I look at that going back to the question, why Pueblo? Well, why not Pueblo? Yeah. And so we were very honored to kind of share our story at that level as well. And we know that the work continues. There is still a lot to be done. There is still a lot of changes that are taking place around us daily. And so that's what allows us to be flexible, to be responsive, and to keep moving that forward as it relates to the work of the chamber.
Yeah, cool. So Stephen, can we get into kind of like practically, if you're a business here in Pueblo, maybe you're not connected with you guys, how do they step in? What do they need to do to get with you?
Well, the first thing that I always, the way that I've always viewed it since I started in 2010 is, the first thing that we want to do is let's have a conversation. Yeah. Let's understand one another, get to know one another. I want to know specifically, what is your business? Why did you choose that business? Why are you opening your business or operating it here in Pueblo?
Yeah.
And in that conversation is where I'm confident we begin to identify ways that our chamber can help support. Our team has done a phenomenal job, in my opinion, of building a diverse offering of benefits.
Yeah.
That, if you're a business that's in need of marketing services, then we've got an option or a platform for that. If you are a business that is, maybe, looking to just start, or maybe you're an entrepreneur, you don't have the business yet, but you're thinking, I just got an idea, what do I do with it now? So, we really have all of these different benefits in place, but it starts with us being able to sit down, let's have a conversation, let's see where you are, what those needs are, and the best ways that the chamber can really support. It's not just about, hey, sign up and, here, go to our website, do this,
Sure.
and that's it. It's really, we want to build a kind of
personal.
customized plan. Yeah, personal.
Yeah.
So it really starts there, and we obviously invite people to check out the information on our website. They can go to PuebloLatinoChamber.com. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and now we're just starting in the TikTok world.
Oh, nice.
That's a new one,
Yeah.
So we're on the social media platform. So a lot of ways that people can connect and kind of see what we do and, hear what we do. But from that conversation from there, if we identify, hey, here's what we can help with, and here's some programs we've done, then it really just starts with a membership, And so we have people join the organization, and from there, start taking advantage of the programs and everything we offer. Start getting involved if they want on a team or on the ambassador program, and going from there.
So I think it was Todd Kelly was here on this podcast from CSU Pueblo, and he was talking about how Pueblo is special because it's so interconnected. You kind of mentioned it just a second ago. I think he said 2 degrees of separation was his line.
Right.
That you can get from, if I'm trying to get to anyone in Pueblo, I'm probably only one connection away from doing that.
Very true.
So can you talk to me about, with the Latino Chamber of Commerce, that piece of building the connections between the businesses here in town, building partnerships?
Oh, yeah.
Why is that so important?
Well, I have oftentimes said that the best and biggest role that the chamber plays is nothing more than that of a connector. And so we have someone that may come in and say, I'm really trying to understand how to do A, or where do I need to go to get B. And through our conversations, through our relationships with other businesses, entities like the city and the county, we're able to make that referral and know exactly who we have to talk to. And sometimes that just comes from, again, getting involved, asking those questions. And as you start to learn and meet people, that is where I think we've been able to be successful in helping businesses navigate then when they come to us with a question like that, who they have to go to. We've had entrepreneurs who come in and say, I've got an idea, I don't know where to go though. From there, we're able to say, well, hey, let's connect you with the Small Biz Development Center, and oh, by the way, let's connect you with SBA, and then also let's bring you back to the city office, and let's go over here. And so we're able to really take them through, and it's pretty neat. It just really comes as you start to learn and get to know more of these individuals that are at each of those entities.
Yeah.
And what's important for me, again, I go back to that partnership piece and that relationship, to just say, that is what, it's not about just sending them to the entity, not saying, hey, go talk to Wake Up Pueblo.
Yeah.
But it's more of, hey, go talk to Ben. He knows exactly what to do when it comes to podcasts. So it's that personal connection too. And when you're able to do that, I think there's a higher level of comfort that people have to say, okay, I got a referral. And so that's why for us at the Chamber, it's always been important, relationships.
Yeah.
And even what I tell our membership department is, we're not interested in selling membership. We're interested in building relationships. Even if a business doesn't join, fine. We're still here to help. If they still have a question or something or need, who do I go to? We're here to help.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you don't know, oftentimes, we have someone that asks us a question and we may not know. Well, it's our opportunity to say, well, we're not sure. Let us ask.
Let's find out. Yeah.
It's within one email or one phone call, we know who to get to.
Yeah.
And we can do that. So Pueblo is a little but big city in the sense that I go back to that word of mouth. You can find where you have to go, and there's that deep level of understanding, which is very unique for our community.
Yeah.
Because I've been to other communities and have other colleagues that I've talked to, and they don't have the ability to do that like we do. You know, they're like, oh, I think that's this department, but I've never met them there. And for us, it's like, oh, pretty much know the whole group.
Yeah, it's like, went to high school, some of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
Their family or whatever the case may be, or so and so's related to them. So
Yeah.
you can't go very many places in Pueblo and throw a rock without hitting a relative at some point. So that's always what
You
I
can't
say.
go many places in Pueblo. I love that.
So, yeah, keep that in mind. You just never know who's there. you
Yeah,
know?
sure. Yeah, no, I agree with that, man. So, obviously, 2020 was a bit of a rough year, and for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
We get into COVID comes to Pueblo,
Yeah.
and businesses are put into a really tough position. You guys obviously have provided a lot of support within the Latino Chamber of Commerce, but you've also been very active in the Business Economic Resource Team, the
Yeah.
BERT team.
Yeah.
So, can you just tell us a little bit about what's that been like? Starting that, what do you guys do there, and how are things going?
Yeah, well, I hope your listeners have 2 more hours. So let me just tell you. Well, everybody knows COVID. Really just came out of nowhere.
Sure.
No one expected. So I remember in February of 2020, it was a Saturday evening. We were having our annual dinner at the Pueblo Convention Center. It's
Yeah.
probably our biggest dinner that we've had. And I remember, the news headlines were reporting on COVID and, cases and monitoring, and are they in the U.S., et cetera. And I remember having a conversation that night with a few of our guests about, do you think it'll come to Colorado or to Pueblo?
Yeah.
Do you think it'll be that bad? And I thought to myself, I don't know. I can't imagine that it would. I mean, I would think, we can do some things. About a week and a half later, we were at a stay-at-home order.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, boy, was I wrong. Because look at what it did. It literally brought our community and our country to a halt, dead in our tracks.
Sure.
And all of the things that we had planned to do as a chamber went to the wayside. But what I'm extremely proud of is, number one, our chamber never closed. We obviously started working remote, to follow the stay-at-home order and follow what the governor had recommended and the CDC guidelines, et cetera. We put all of our events on hold, obviously.
Sure.
We have at least 3 or 4 a month that are pulling people together, crowds of 50 or 150
Mixing people together, yeah.
Exactly. Networking, all those things,
Sure.
all of that stopped. And what I'm extremely proud of is that our team came together, and the immediate, question was, so how do we respond as a chamber? What do we do now? And so we started, that brainstorming session, and I'll always remember this, probably for as long as I live. It was a Sunday evening, about 8 o'clock, and I was on the phone with a member, and they, were in tears, asking me, Stephen, what do I do? My business is going to go away. It's going to die. If I can't pay my people, do I lay them off? I know that I've got, mothers and fathers, it's going to kill me to do that to them. What do I do? And all I can tell them was, we're going to figure this out. We're going to work on it. We're going to do all that we can. That is the last option any business should talk about. And I remember after that phone call, kind of sitting back thinking, I know I'm not the only one getting these types of calls and questions, right?
Sure.
There's probably many others out there that have those same questions, have those same fears. Heck, I was even afraid, well, what does this mean for Pueblo, for our industry, you name it?
Yeah.
And so from that, I remember thinking, okay, there's got to be more out there. Let's all come together. And so that was how the Business Economic Recovery Team started. So on Monday morning, I put a phone call in to the mayor, to Commissioner Ortiz, to Jeff Shaw, to Rod Slyhoff at the Pueblo Chamber, to Amy Gasparetti at the Pueblo West Chamber. And I said, well, number one, I know most of us are membership organizations. Number two, I know this is important for the city and the county. What do you all think if we formed a team? And we'll call it the Business Economic Recovery Team. And our objective is really three pillars. Really. One, to identify national, state, or local resources that are going to aid businesses during this time. Two, to identify national, state, or local campaigns that would support or encourage the investment in our business community. And three, let's leverage all of our communication channels to get this information out, especially as it relates to COVID.
Sure.
So knowing that I may have businesses that the Pueblo Chamber doesn't have on my email list and vice versa, and the city may have some information about a program, let's all come together to work on this. So that was the start of the Business Economic Recovery Team. And I think somewhere I have the initial draft of this little logo that we came up with all of our different agency logos to say, here's what we're going to do.
Was there any pushback from the other agencies real quick to get in, or is everybody really cooperative?
Absolutely not. Everybody was just 100% on board. They're like, let's do this. Because everybody was like, what does this mean? You know what?
Sure.
Here we are in this stay at home. We're all sitting at home thinking, really? We're all at home? You know? My calendar was completely packed and literally everything went away overnight. And so everybody was so welcoming and cooperative, and I was so appreciative of that. And that, again, I think speaks to Pueblo.
Yeah.
Our level of collaboration and our ability to overcome what's before us is just phenomenal, you know. And so the Business Economic Recovery Team was formed. And from there, we started having weekly meetings every Tuesday at 1 o'clock to talk about where were we in relation to these COVID cases, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, what next was coming out for businesses, what was happening. So as you know, the Small Business Administration at the national level rolled out the program, the Payroll Protection Program. Well, you know, we jumped on that as a team. We invited SBA into the BERT team. We invited SBDC. So that initial group of 6 or so grew to about 20 agencies that were a part of this. From Pueblo West Metro to our utility companies to the Small Business Administration, Downtown Association, all of these other agencies, again, coming together weekly, 1 o'clock. What do we need to be doing? What's the updates? Where's the information? And then we formed sub-teams. So we had a marketing team, we had a data team, we had a education team, we had a, it was a finance resource team, and then we had a recovery team. And so all of those teams would meet separate on, okay, what do we need to be doing? So the education team, they would put on webinars like how to pivot your business. Our finance resource team was pulling together a list of all of these different resources that were out there, from the payroll protection to grants to Energize Colorado. And then our marketing team was combining all of these things. So they actually developed a toolkit that now lives on supportingpueblo.com/BERT. You can go there and see that toolkit and all of the links to all of these different resources. And then all of our BERT team would come together and say, okay, let's push this out. So we would put the information
together, all your
package
channels,
it, and then they would, boom, hit all the channels out to the community.
Yeah.
We'd all email it, we'd all post it on social media, all of those things. If there was something coming up, it was out there so businesses could get involved. Yeah. We also, during that time, started what I'm very proud. I haven't been aware of something like this being done, during the pandemic or prior, but it's now something that's going to become a permanent. And that was, we launched the Coffee with SBA, is what we titled it. And so every Wednesday, because obviously a lot of businesses have questions about, payroll protection, do I qualify? What does that look like?
Yeah.
So instead of us trying to gain the information and then put it back out, we were kind of the middleman, right? So I looked at it and thought, well, let's just remove that and just connect SBA with the businesses. So we launched this Coffee with SBA every Wednesday from 8:30 to 9 via our Facebook pages. So we were streaming to 6 or 7 Facebook pages simultaneously, and just letting SBA talk to the businesses, letting them say, here's what you need to know, here's what's happening, etc. They would submit questions, we would pose those over to SBA, and that's how we went through all of those weeks through the pandemic to answer those questions. And it still remains today. So SBA is actually extended, or I should say they've expressed an interest to keep that just going all the time.
Yeah.
They said this was extremely beneficial for us to have, and now other communities in the state saw what we were doing and are reaching out to SBA to say, hey, we want to do that too.
Same thing.
And so what SBA is doing, they're saying, well, let's just do it with the Pueblo community, because they're the ones that launched it.
Yeah.
But we could just make this a statewide thing. And I look at that and say, Pueblo started that.
Yeah.
That was Pueblo that initiated it. We even have a former colleague of mine who works for the SBA back in, I believe he's in Massachusetts, had reached out to me during the pandemic and said, can you share with me how you did this? We're going to launch something like this here in Massachusetts with our local chambers. And I look back to that and say, our Latino chamber in Pueblo started that. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So I was extremely proud of the team, extremely proud of the collaboration that took place, has taken place, and continues to be in place today.
Yeah.
And so that was the work of the BERT team. It continued. It moved forward. It was addressing. We would, as things opened up, we would, kind of, okay, here we go. And then as things ratcheted back down, we'd kind of dig in again.
Yeah.
But one of the teams in particular, which Jeff Shaw led, was our recovery team. And the ultimate question for that team was, when this is all over, what do we got to do to make sure we keep our economy moving forward and growing?
Yeah.
Obviously early on when we formed it, the thought was, in June or July when everything's back to normal. I joke now and tell everybody, we never said what June or July, what year
Yeah.
it was going to be when things would, return.
Sure.
But nonetheless, we're making progress. But that team put together what we have today, and that's titled the One Pueblo Plan. So it was much more than anybody, I think, ever envisioned. But, the team ultimately was meeting and said, well, what does it look like? And they said, we've got an opportunity, to really we know our community is going to be transformed because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So let's really knock it out of the park. So we actually worked with Addy Advantage, who was part of our community before, working kind of more specifically with Petco, but we brought in that scope for this economic recovery plan to nonprofits, K-12 education, higher education, manufacturing, small business. I mean, they did hundreds of hours of research and used the data that our data team had even collected. They did their own surveys and so much more to develop that One Pueblo Plan that really is now the map to say, here is where we can go as a community.
Yeah.
And today, what BERT is actually doing is we still meet bi-weekly or so with our all BERT team. We have all of our subcommittees now, but we've reorganized ourselves to focus more on the implementation of that One Pueblo Plan in 5 main categories. The first one is vision alignment. Who are we and where are we going as a community? It's being led by the city and the county.
Yeah.
We have talent pipeline optimization, being led by CSU Pueblo and PCC,
Okay.
and helping to align our educational systems to support all of our businesses and ultimately produce the workforce of tomorrow. We have our target industry, which is what industries are we really going to work to grow and recruit, to do all those things in Pueblo.
Yeah.
Obviously, one of them that, really when you look at the pandemic that really shifted was the ability for people to work from home. So are there industries that we could recruit to work from home in Pueblo?
Yeah.
Call Pueblo their home. Then you have foundational community elements. So as we talk about a growing community, what are the things that we really need to have in order to do that, right? Streets and parks and housing and all those things become a part of that. And then the last one is community positioning, kind of going back to what you and I talked about a little earlier of what's our image, what's our story, how do we market ourselves, how do we tell that story so that everybody else in the community and everybody else across the country knows who Pueblo is.
Yeah.
So those are the 5 main areas that this One Pueblo Plan is working to address. BERT now has over 80 individuals involved with this effort. So I think back to March of 2020 when it was 6 people on a Zoom call, saying, what are we going to do together to work on this, to now having over 80 individuals on a Zoom call, still saying, hey, here's how we can work on behalf of our community.
Wow.
And so when I look at all of that, the only thing I can think of is 3 words. That is Pueblo. That is how our community works. That is how our community collaborates. That's the spirit of entrepreneurship, of determination, of collaboration. And that, I think, is something we have to be very fortunate of, because other communities are barely starting to have these conversations.
Sure.
They're barely starting to say, well, what do we do now? Things are opening up, and where should we go from here? And I look at it and think, boy, we've already got a plan. Look at all of what we did. Look at all of the assets that were built through this collaboration through 2020 to now, and look at where we're headed. And I've had the great fortune of, again, being on some certain calls through our involvement with the United States Hispanic Chamber. So I've had the chance to just kind of share a little bit of what we're doing, and people are just always blown away. They're like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
How did you guys do it? And all I can sometimes say is, oh, that's Pueblo. This is how we do it.
That's Pueblo.
So, like they have sometimes said, what's in the water here? So.
What's in the water? Yeah. So you kind of hit on this already, but just in general, Pueblo community, from the top all the way to the bottom, how have you seen Pueblo responding to the challenge of COVID? And how do you think that Pueblo community has come together during this time?
I think it obviously, even what I saw early in the pandemic, it was so interesting. It's just so inspiring to see that even with the stay-at-home orders, people understood the importance of supporting their community. They understood the importance of working together to get through it. And one of the taglines of BERT, and we actually developed a graphic that many of us use when we're on Zoom calls, says, we're in this together.
Yeah.
And so what I saw was our community truly coming together. And when you had restaurants that couldn't have in person or anything, all they could do was curbside, You saw people out there supporting.
Yeah.
When you saw certain activities that normally would have taken place to support a youth group or whatever the case may be, not taking place, you still saw that support for that youth group. You still saw those donations going through. You still saw those mentoring type of things happening. Maybe a little bit different, and I think all of us in the community had to learn what that was, but we became creative, right? But I really think the community band together to say, you know, pandemic or not, we're still going to offer that support and take care of one another. And even at a point in time where, you know, our case number was just drastically increasing, you know, there was a time when it just kind of like, boom, fell straight down. And even, I think others have asked, and I venture to say, even our colleagues at the state level probably asked, like, well, what did Pueblo do?
What happened?
And I'm like, I don't know. But what I think, in my opinion, is Pueblo did what Pueblo will always do. We buckle down and we say, we'll get it done. You know, give us a challenge and we'll figure it out. And so all of those things of our community coming together, of collaborating and supporting, and just continuing to be good people, good neighbors, is what I saw our community do through the pandemic. We've always done that, especially in the pandemic, and now coming out of the pandemic, it's the same thing. But I do know that there's the hunger for our community to get back out there, to do things again. And I think we're doing a good job. I think we just need to continue to keep an eye on that goal, if you will, keep the eye on the prize and not let the pressure up. But our community has responded, you know, beautifully, in my opinion, to all of those things, anything. Because how many of us could have thought we were going to live through a pandemic?
Yeah.
You know, boy, are we going to have some campfire stories in years to come, from grandkids or what have you. But there was no playbook on this, you know. There was no step-by-step guide. There was no how do we do this. It was, we're going to figure it out. We were building the plane as we were flying, so to speak.
Sure.
So, but Pueblo did it. And, you know, and all I can say is that is Pueblo. That's how we do it.
Yeah, I think, you know, for me as well, I was finishing up college whenever COVID hit. So, like, I bet I had a conversation with a buddy of mine first week of March, seeing that stuff, and I was like, oh, whatever. And, like, I remember Professor Lovato, he, like, came into our class, and he was like, just in case this happens, and he was, like, saying it kind of jokingly, if we have to shut down, here's our plan. And I remember laughing and being like, oh, that's not going to happen. Yeah. Then a week later, it was like, are you kidding me? So
sitting at home. Yeah, I remember sitting on my patio just thinking, are we really at home? I mean, has everything just stopped? I was like, this is a bad version of Groundhog Day. You know, we're not doing anything. So it was very different, you know, and the focus totally had to shift. And, you know, again, I think so many things, you know, from a community level to a, you know, organizational level, and then just to a personal level. Yeah. Everything that we knew in our life totally was changed and altered forever. Yeah. You know, and that's a lot. That's a lot. So, but our community, I think, is banding together as it always has. It's supporting one another as it always has, and we are going to be a stronger Pueblo than we ever have been, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think one of the spots as well that I saw the most like community banding together was in the education system. Whenever that happened, I know like I saw schools still offering lunches to people as they drove by. You know, you see that teachers are trying to make these changes, and I know you're a very education passionate guy. I mean, you're involved still with Chavez Huerta. You do things with CSC Pueblo with PLP. Talk to me about it on that end. What's COVID been like education wise, and what have you seen from Pueblo to keep that going for our kids and our college students?
Yeah, well, now that you say it, I was like, boy, where do I find time for all these things?
I know. That's why I was writing your stuff down. I was like, shoot.
That's another area. And that is another passion. As a matter of fact, before I had made the decision to major in business, I actually wanted to become a teacher. And maybe someday eventually a school administrator, because I just loved the world of education. I loved the ability to inspire. And I believe that in the pandemic, that is what we saw our teachers rise to do. You know, how do you frame that and ask someone, you know, keep people motivated, right? That wasn't the question, but to me it was the outcome. What I saw from our level, starting in the K-12 area, is obviously the same thing that every business had to do. They had to pivot, right? They had to figure it out. But what I saw was a flood of resources and support coming to our educational systems to help get the students and get people where they needed to be to continue that. Yeah. And more importantly, what I saw from the teachers was that heightened level of dedication to say, now more than ever, I need to keep my students engaged, motivated, inspired to keep going, right? It's natural for us to all feel fear and other things, but I had the chance to observe just a few of those virtual classrooms, and just seeing the teachers and the students interact in a totally different way that many of us probably could have never imagined would have to do, literally from one week to the next, from one day to the next, much less, was just inspiring. And I thought that is what's at the heart of educators. At a higher education level, obviously with our colleges and such, the ways that they had to pivot, a whole another set of challenges. But the way that their teams came together to pivot and offer different things, and to put in place more technology, or to train more for the technology that we needed to use. All of those things. The list can just, you can build a list 4 or 5 pages deep, minimum, of all of the things that our educational institutions did, K-career really, to respond to the pandemic. And all I look at too is, there was motivation and determination behind those instructors and professors and teachers to do just that, to keep their students, their cohorts motivated, focused, and determined to overcome that. But obviously, we know it's going to have an effect, right? Not all students can learn online, and that's okay. And we know that it's going to have a lasting impact for educational systems. So as things return, and this is my opinion, I think we need to maintain that same level of support, if not even more, to our educational institutions and to our teachers and our professors and our faculty and staff, to keep them supported, motivated to do what it is they have to do to catch our students up. Because there was a loss of learning, right?
Sure.
There was a loss for everybody in some degree. And I don't want to just minimize these types of things in the pandemic to just, a loss of revenue, or, we know that we lost community members as well. And so as we move forward past this, I think it gives us a new frame by which to look at things and say we need to, now more than ever, be good neighbors to one another, to be good stewards of the resources that we have, to support one another, because that is now what's going to be most critical for that next generation coming into our community in order to support them. It's not just about going to work or employees, but they're coming into our community, and we need to do that. So every industry, and probably education more so, was hit, by this pandemic. But I was just so incredibly inspired and honored to be a part of some of those, just even to a small degree, to do all that I could, and help in any way that I could. But to see it was like, wow, this is incredible. Who could have imagined this program or that program, virtual job fairs and virtual graduations, and the ways that they still, made it to where those people were recognized, those students were recognized, they were supported. I know even specifically in my work with Chavez Huerta, purchased laptops for every single student, worked to ensure that every single student had Wi-Fi at home now, and sometimes I think we take certain things like that for granted, right? And we think, oh, well, it's, 2020 or 2021, everybody's got a hotspot. No, they don't. But again, our educational institutions stepping up to the plate and saying, well, we're going to work to address it then. That was what was inspiring. So,
wow. All right, I think I've only got one question left for you, Stephen. So,
okay.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, obviously, with Undercover Billionaire coming out, some of the exposure that Pueblo is now getting from around the country, a lot of business owners are starting to see Pueblo in that light. They've been listening, hopefully, to the Pueblo Passion podcast, hearing a lot of you guys talk about this. I like to ask, if you're a business owner, maybe in Miami or Buffalo, New York, or somewhere in California, and you're watching this and you're kind of hearing the why Pueblo has stepped up, what's going on with Pueblo, what would be your quick pitch to be come check out Pueblo, come maybe set up a base here?
Well, that's a tough one. A quick pitch to
as quick as you want to make.
Yeah, let's see. Let me give you my 10-minute version. No,
yeah.
I'm just kidding.
That's all good. Yeah, I've got 10 minutes.
No, one of the things that I, honestly, because, when I've gone to national conventions and other things, people ask that question, well, where are you based, and this and that. All that I would tell people, if they're looking at it from the perspective of who is Pueblo, what is Pueblo, there is no other way to describe it necessarily other than saying, come and see us. Once you're here, you will feel what Pueblo is. You will see what Pueblo is. You will hear what Pueblo is in the people in the culture, in the ways that we do things. And then from there is when you have to make up your mind about if Pueblo is the place for you. And so I oftentimes tell people, you got to jump in it. There's no way to, again, kind of like what that analogy I used earlier, it's like beauty. Hard to explain, but you know it when you see it.
Yeah.
And once you're here, you will see what we have to offer as a community. And if it's from the business perspective, you will see what types of supports and what types of programs and what types of partnerships, and kind of selfishly, what kind of chamber we are to support you as a business if you're going to relocate here to Pueblo. And even look at our friends at the PEDCO, Pueblo Economic Development Corporation. How many communities have that type of support and system in order to help recruit companies here to Pueblo? So all that I will tell people, the quick pitch is come and see us, and you will see why it is that Pueblo means business.
All right, come and see us. I love it. It's like beauty. It's fantastic.
Exactly. So that's all I can tell. And I've told colleagues of mine in the chamber industry when they're like, oh, tell us about Pueblo. I'm like, just come visit.
Come and see.
Jump on the plane. So I'll host you here. And typically I try and drive them to September, because when our good friends at the Pueblo Chamber put on the Chili and Frijoles Festival, that's the one.
That's when you want to.
That's when you can hook a lot of people, into Pueblo for sure. It's not too hot, not too cold yet. You got some great chili, great atmosphere. So
that's it.
Good time. State Fair and chili. That's that window
that's
there.
It.
So come see us. That's what I always tell people. Visit us, and there's so much, and we've got so many more amenities. I mean, geez, I can sit here and talk to you another hour about Choose Pueblo, Supporting Pueblo, and all these other platforms now that are emerging. That some of them were even there prior to the pandemic, but one like Supporting Pueblo, for example, emerged as a result of the pandemic to help support more businesses. So sell globally from Pueblo, so to speak. So anyway, that's what I tell people. You just got to come and check it out. You just got to get involved.
Awesome. Stephen, thank you so much for your time. I'm just honored to have you in here. I think all of us in the Pueblo community can say we're very proud of all the work you guys have been doing, and just thankful for everything.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ben. It's certainly our pleasure and our blessing, as I tell many, to do the work that we do. And certainly for me personally, this is my home. This is where I choose to be. I love other parts of the country. I love DC, love Florida, those areas, but nothing beats driving down the highway, whether it's north or south, and seeing that sign that says, "Welcome to Pueblo, home of the heroes." So thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Of course. So one last plug, Stephen, how do we get connected with the Latino Chamber of Commerce? How do they connect with you? And then how do they get to the BERT team and the things you guys have done?
Yeah, so the BERT team, they can go to supportingpueblo.com/BERT. That whole landing page is dedicated to all the resources and programs that BERT is currently working on. If someone was interested in getting involved with one of those pillars that I spoke of, or the BERT effort itself, they can give us a call at the office, and we're happy to put them on a team. We'll take volunteers all day long. If someone was interested in just connecting with the chamber, to learn more about the programs or the resources, we would certainly encourage them to visit our website, PuebloLatinoChamber.com. They can give us a call at 542-5513, or they can stop by our office located at 215 South Victoria in downtown Pueblo and visit us there, or check us out on any of the social media platforms to get an idea for the types of programs and the things that we do all across the community. And I would welcome that. And the one thing I always tell people, you do not have to be Latino to join. You can always come to our office. We are here for everybody. So give us a call, because we would also love the opportunity to get to know the businesses in Pueblo too.
Perfect. Awesome. Stephen, thank you so much for your time, man.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it very much.
Of course. Thank you guys so much for listening. This has been Pueblo Passion, brought to you by Wake Up Pueblo. Go check out some of our previous episodes as well. There's a lot of people in this community trying to make things better. If you want to hear Shanna Farmer talk about United Way and the things they do, go check that one out. If you want to hear our mayor, Nick Gradisar, talk about that spike that we talked about in COVID and how they were able to get that down, go listen to that episode. Go check out our episodes here on our podcast, as well as check out the Wake Up podcast, and just get connected with us here at Wake Up Pueblo. Get connected with the Pueblo Latino Chamber of Commerce. Guys, thank you so much for listening.